Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Bayou Bets for Thursday, November the 10th, here on bet.NOLA.com and the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. I'm Zach Ewing, and we are here to set up a great weekend of sports for you in Louisiana. LSU looking to continue its march to the SEC championship game. The Pelicans play tonight. I think they play again Saturday. And then the Saints wrap things up on Sunday in Pittsburgh against the Steelers, looking for what has become an elusive thing for them, a victory. So we'll dig into all of that. Rod Walker from the Times-Picayune will be here. Also, Max Meyer from Caesars Sportsbook will be here to talk us through some of the trends. We are, of course, brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. If you would like to join the action, you can sign up at NOLA.com/Caesars and get the first bet on Caesars up to $1,250. If you lose, you get that back in form of a bonus bet. So that is a fantastic deal. You can sign up first-time users only. Or if you prefer LSU championship posters, we still have that deal for you too. You get to pick up a set of 3 of them at LSUposter.com. So go there today and sign up when you can. Guys, Jim and Spencer are gone today, so we get the A team. We get Zoe Collins-Rath. We get Gabe Henderson are here, and we're excited. We got lots to talk about, guys.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Where do we even start?
Well, where do we begin? We'll begin with the New Orleans Saints, who are down to 1.5-point favorites in Pittsburgh. Part of that, I think, is because of just a dreary injury report, which they seemingly all have been for the Saints. But let me just bring this up just to show you exactly how terrible this is for the Saints. I mean, it just seemingly gets worse and worse. Marcus Davenport, limited practice today. Mark Ingram did not practice. Jarvis Landry, limited practice, but we've seen that for 2 weeks and he hasn't played. And then also DNPs for Marshawn Lattimore, Eric McCoy, Andres Pete Werner, limited practice for Ryan Ramczyk. Today you had Marcus May with a DNP with an abdomen. Cam Jordan, limited practice today. That one was supposed to be rest. So it is possible that that he'll be back in the fold tomorrow. But guys, it just doesn't look good for the Saints. In fact, I hate to say this, I have trouble seeing even how they're favored, even against a bad Pittsburgh team, Gabe.
Yeah, I think if you look across the way as well, if you look at Pittsburgh, I know you guys have talked about it before here that they traded away Chase Claypool, and Najee Harris is just having a down year. I don't see how the Steelers could have a chance in any game with as bad as their offense is. So as banged up as the Saints are, they still have some weapons. They still have Alvin Kamara. So I think that gives them an edge.
It's possible. I would say any road trip to Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin coaching can be tricky if you're not at the top of the league. I would also say, Zoe, the return of T.J. Watt could happen. The Steelers took him off IR. They have 2 weeks to bring him back, so it doesn't have to be this Sunday. But if T.J. Watt does play in any capacity, that's a game changer for me.
It can, but to me, it's also Saints are banged up and Pittsburgh are both banged up. And while the Saints still have Alvin Kamara, the offense is not jiving and going the way it's supposed to be going. So it could just be bad on bad, and it could just be an ugly game to watch simply because these teams are not who they should be. They're not who they think they are.
How's that for a sales pitch? It's going to be fun to watch at noon on Fox on Sunday. Saints and Steelers. Listen, it may be ugly. It may not be who the Saints expected they were going to be. They damn well better win this game if they want any relevance for the rest of the season. I know the division's bad, but at 3-6, you still have a chance. We'll talk about it in a minute. Thursday Night Football is Panthers-Falcons. The Falcons at 4-5 are tied for first place with the Bucs, just a game in front of the Saints. And hey, a Saints victory could have them tied for first place by the end of the weekend. I mean, it is possible. And so as crazy as it sounds, this is like Waterloo for the Saints. They're going to be beat up. They're going to be outnumbered. They've got to find a way to get a victory and then come back home, play the Rams next week, and probably the same thing next week. So the other game for hometown teams this weekend, LSU at Arkansas. LSU has ticked up to a 3.5-point favorite. Gabe, I've been saying all week what a huge trap spot this is for the Tigers. Just 6 days, well, technically 7 days, but it's a morning game, really 6.5 days after they finished the big win over Alabama, an emotional victory. Now you go to Fayetteville, where it's going to be 23 degrees. Tough spot for LSU.
Yeah, I hate playing Arkansas, honestly, as an LSU alum, and I think Brian Kelly has them ready for this. The last two games between these two teams has been decided by 3 points. I think it'll be close, but I like everything I've heard from Brian Kelly all week. He said all the LSU players have 24 hours to celebrate the Alabama win, and then it's on to Arkansas. And this team has a lot of guys who step up to big occasions, and with the chance to potentially win the West this weekend, I think 3.5 is a good place to be for LSU, and I like LSU to cover in this game.
Yeah, 3.5 is kind of a sticking point for me. I think it's going to be a close game. If I'm getting that hook, I kind of like Arkansas. I do think it'll be a close game. It's one thing to say the 24-hour rule and all that kind of stuff, Zoe. It's another thing to actually practice it and by Tuesday be ready to go for the next week.
Yeah, so if that happens, I wouldn't be surprised if LSU comes out to a slow start. It's cold. I'm from the Midwest. I get it. It's not fun. But at the same time, you can't let this team walk over you. You just came off a big win over Alabama. You have the tools in your arsenal to beat Arkansas on a good day if it's 75 and sunny, no matter where you play it. But ideally, Brian Kelly is just like hammering it into his players in the locker room. Focus. Don't forget about Alabama. It's 0-0 win.
Yeah, that's the idea anyway. We'll see how difficult that proves to be for LSU. Bright and early, 11 a.m. Saturday morning. Other big games in the area this weekend. Tulane could have been college game day, didn't get it, but they are a 1.5 favorite against Central Florida. And then tonight, to kind of start festivities for the weekend, the New Orleans Pelicans play at home against the Portland Trailblazers, who will not have Damian Lillard or Joseph Nurkic in their lineup tonight because of rest. Rod Walker of the Times-Picayune is here. We're going to talk to him about all those games. I believe he is headed to the Smoothie King Center to see the Pelicans tonight. So let's bring on Rod. Rod, how are you?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, and it's another big weekend in Louisiana sports. I believe you're headed to the Pelicans tonight. We'll start with them. No Lillard, no Nurkic. That takes away the sting of a back-to-back road trip for the Pelicans. I mean, normally this is a tough spot for them, but you think without those guys playing for Portland, they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, and this is one of those back-to-backs where both teams are coming off a back-to-back. Portland was in Charlotte last night and played there, and Dame had a really good game. And I was actually sort of looking forward to seeing Dame and CJ play each other. They've yet to face each other since after the trade because Dame hadn't played in any of the 3 games. So we won't get to see those two on the court together tonight. But I think this is a game that I expect the Pelicans to win. I mean, assuming everybody's playing on their second night of a back-to-back as well.
Yeah, I mean, I really think, Rod, last night in Chicago, it's a big win for this team. I mean, the road trip had been tough. They'd lost to Indiana on Monday. You lose that game, and you kind of lost all the momentum from early in the year. But now they come home above 500, 6 straight home games, really a chance to kind of build some position in the standings.
Yeah, I think this is a really good opportunity for this team. You look at that game last night, and Brandon and Zion just basically took over in the fourth quarter after struggling early on. And that's the thing I think that makes this team a little different from just teams of the past, man. They just have so much depth, and those other guys sort of kept the team in the game until Zion and Bi were able to close it for them. So they just have so many weapons on this team, and that's going to go a long way for this team and for them to reach the expectations that they have for this season.
Yeah, line tonight went from 6.5 up to 8.5, and in some places even 9 with the news that Lillard and Nurkic are both not playing. But I agree with you. I mean, I think the Pelicans' depth plays a big role when you take away the other team's stars. The Pelicans not only have their stars, but if you're talking about players 4 through 10 on a depth chart, the Pels are going to have an advantage against most teams in that situation.
Yeah, and those guys that are 4 through 10, I mean, those are some guys who are, they're really fighting to try to, they want to get more minutes, so they play really hard. And this team, I mean, you look at what they did last year, they're still, they're trying to build on that, and they want to continue what they started last year. So, yeah, I mean, I just expect that depth to wear Portland down tonight. So I definitely think the Pelicans will be able to cover, especially at home.
We're watching Bayou Bets here on bet.nola.com and the Bayou Bets YouTube page. Do us a favor, hit the share button, hit the like button. Leave your comments. We'll get them on the air live as we're talking here with Times-Picayune sports columnist Rod Walker. Rod, the rest of the weekend sets up real nice for New Orleans fans, especially for those going out to Yulman Stadium on Saturday. First of all, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this game, how much surprise was there? I mean, this Tulane season came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us saw it coming. I do remember the game against the Kansas State game. I really thought they had a shot at winning that game. I think it was just based on how well they had played against Oklahoma last year and all the things that Tulane had gone through. But once they got that win, I mean, things just sort of seemed to take off for this team. I know they probably really regret letting that Southern Miss game slip away because this is a team that could be undefeated right now. And if they were, I mean, imagine how crazy it would be around here if they were undefeated and, getting to be a part of that playoff conversation. They'd probably be, 6, 7, 8, probably in the 8 range, I guess, right around now. So it could really be a special season. They let that one get away, but still has a chance to be one of the best seasons in Tulane history.
Listen, if they roll off 3 more straight wins and go to the Cotton Bowl, possibly against LSU, don't want to say it, as if it's a done deal, but certainly a chance of that happening. I mean, this will go down in Tulane lore. I do want to ask you, because I'm based in Baton Rouge, and I know Zoe and Gabe are scattered about. In New Orleans, Tulane has always been a little bit of the, a lot of students from out of state, and it's the private school, and maybe hasn't always been that feel of New Orleans' hometown team. Do you feel a buzz around the city about the Green Wave?
I haven't actually seen them in person yet, but there's people I've talked to who've gone to because typically I'm either traveling or something on the day they're playing, but people that have gone to the game said it's really picked up this season, and I know they really want to get College Game Day here for this game just because it's 2 ranked teams, and College Game Day ended up going to TCU and Texas game. But I think there's definitely a buzz, and that last game, people talk about how the stadium was, and I'm expecting that same type of crowd this Saturday, and that should be enough to to really get things buzzing and enough to just maybe get them over the hump in what should be another good game for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And after UCF, the Greenies get SMU and then at Cincinnati to end the season. So it does not get any easier for them. Maybe gets a little easier for LSU. We'll just kind of move on chronologically here. But LSU playing at Arkansas, we were talking about it right before you came on, Rod. It's hard to envision a bigger trap spot for a team than LSU coming off of that emotional win, the 2-point conversion, so cathartic for everyone. They rushed the field. Now you're going to the derisively named Fayette-Nam, where it's 22 degrees, where Arkansas is ticked off after losing to Liberty. I mean, it is just hard to imagine, as a bettor or a fan, a worse spot for a team than LSU. And we'll see what they're made of, I think, this week.
Yeah, it's a really tough spot, and you look at what Brian Kelly's done, and I just think he's going to have this team ready. But, man, it's tough. I mean, you can say all the things that you're supposed to say about, we're going to flush that Alabama win and just focus on Arkansas. But that's really hard for some guys who are, 18 to 21-year-olds to do when you got all their peers on campus telling how great they are all week. And it's really hard for college students to lock back in like that. So this is going to be a really tough game. And, I think LSU has to make sure this game stays close early. You can't let Arkansas jump on you early, because if you do, it could get rough. So, I mean, they're going to have to keep it close early, I think. I think that's going to be the whole key for this game for them.
Yeah, and I heard somebody say earlier today, I think it was Uncle Big Nick on Jim's Datitude podcast, said, I actually like Arkansas in the first half. And I thought, well, that may be so, but you let Arkansas get out in the first half, and like you said, things can snowball on you in that spot as a road team. So we'll see. Rod, I think you and I were the only ones who picked against LSU in the Carville picks grid that comes in Friday morning's paper. So a lot of people like LSU. I'm just not so sure, especially getting those points.
And I don't know
with
if
Arkansas.
on KJ Jefferson, will he play or not play, but if he plays, I think that definitely factors into this as well. I mean, if he plays, it could, really be a little even tougher on LSU.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Moving on to the Saints on Sunday, and we'll wrap up there, Rod. I know you got to get out to the arena, but the injury report came out today. It seems like every injury report for New Orleans has been bad news this year. So this one's no different. Offensive lineman now joining the fray of the wounded. Saints are still favored, though. And I mean, for those who don't know, Rod grew up a Steelers fan, so he follows the Steelers as well. It's a weird spot. It's 2 wounded teams. Is this Waterloo for the Saints? I mean, they almost have to win this game to stay in things.
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the big keys to this game is going to be if TJ Watt plays. I mean, he's a guy that the Steelers have only had in that season opener against Cincinnati. I saw a weird stat the other day. I mean, in that game, the Steelers forced 5 turnovers. Since then, they've only forced 5 turnovers. So that just kind of shows you the kind of impact that a guy like TJ Watt can have, because he's just so disruptive. And if you get him against this Saints team that may be without both Andrews Pete and Eric McCoy, and moving, Cesar Ruiz to center like he had to do Monday night, I mean, I think that could be really tough for this Saints offense, where that struggled blocking Baltimore. They struggled tremendously blocking Baltimore Monday night, and obviously the weather in Pittsburgh is not going to be great either. And it's just Steelers are coming off of a bye. To me, there are a lot of things about this game that makes me lean towards the Steelers, and obviously their record isn't great, but the Saints' record isn't great either. And I mean, I think you got two teams that neither team has really been good this year.
Were you surprised by the effort on Monday night? I mean, I hate to question effort. I know professional athletes try as hard as they can. They didn't get there if they don't. But I really felt like last week was the Saints' chance to make a stand and say, okay, we beat the Raiders. Let's get 2 in a row. Let's kind of turn this thing around. And they kind of came out flat.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, though. I think Baltimore's a really good team. I think they're a team that people probably aren't talking about quite enough, because everybody's talking about Buffalo and Kansas City. So I do think Baltimore is really good. I think they're better than the Saints. I think they're better than the Saints, even if the Saints were healthy. I just think they were that much better. Like I don't know if Marshawn Lattimore or Michael Thomas and Jameis Winston, I don't know if they win that game with those guys. I just don't know if this team is very good right now. And we'll find out a lot more Sunday. And I know we keep saying that every week, like we'll find out more, but just a lack of consistency should be a concern. And at some point you have to realize that, okay, maybe this is just who this team is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk more as things go on and if things continue to go south, but the future may not look a whole lot brighter. But as for right now, big game on Sunday. Rod, we appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks.
Rod Walker with great stuff as always. And yeah, guys, I mean, you can say this with a lot of different records. I feel like in the NFL, 3-7 feels a lot different than 4-6. Like if you're 3-7, if you have a first-round draft pick, which the Saints don't, you're starting to look at those mock drafts and think who's there in the top 10 next year. If you're 4-6, okay, well we win next week. We're 5-6. We're still in this thing, especially in this division, Zoe. But I can't get away from the idea. I know Jim's called about 6 games must-wins already this year. I think this one is. You better win.
I mean, I feel like for a lot of teams, every game is a must-win, but I feel like when your season is literally on the ropes, at this point, you have to win every single game to at least prove your worth, show that you have a team. Our team and organization isn't going down the drain. Everything's fine. Injuries that have been racking up in the offense isn't firing all cylinders as it should, and I'd at least hope that would happen with your quarterback being nicknamed the Red Rifle. Like, come on, guys, please do better. Give this city something to root for other than the Pelicans. And
I will say this: Saints fans, I don't think one victory is going to cure anything at this point because they're down in the dumps. But I just think mathematically, like you need to win, or the picture starts to look really dreary. Give a shout out to Caitlin. She says, "Can I have a shout out? Love LSU." And her mama was a big fan. Well, Caitlin and your mama, I hope you have a good week in Fayetteville this weekend or on TV watching. Bundle up if you're going. With that said, I want to bring on Max Meyer from Caesar Sportsbook. He is their content provider and follows a lot of the trends, a lot of the money, a lot of the action. Max, appreciate you being here. And while we're on the subject of LSU, you had a tweet earlier today that said this game was getting action as if it were an NFL game, which for those who don't know in the betting world means a heck of a lot in college.
Yeah, it's not too often where you see a college game, rising in the ranks with the NFL. We did see that last week with Tennessee, Georgia, and this game isn't quite that same level. But for this week in the college slate, it's been unparalleled. Only the Falcons have gotten more spread bets so far than LSU and NFL, and LSU's gotten more money than 22 out of the 28 NFL sides this week.
Wow, that's incredible. Obviously, KJ Jefferson, Arkansas quarterback, is injured. LSU came off with a big victory. I mean, are you guys seeing money from professionals and public on this side?
For LSU, it's been a lot of public money. Louisiana sports fans, obviously, they love their teams, especially when they're rolling like the Tigers have. And so there's just been a bunch of support. And we were at 3 for most of the week. It just got moved up to 3.5 this morning. And I'm interested to see if we're going to be starting taking sharper action at 3.5, just because, in their minds, like obviously LSU is coming off that enormous win over Alabama, could be due for a letdown spot against an unranked Arkansas team that's been disappointing. But they also might be sitting and waiting just because, like you said, KJ Jefferson's status is in question with his injury, and this line will go up even more if he doesn't end up playing.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I do want to pivot also on Saturday. Tulane facing Central Florida. We talk about what a big game it is for Tulane. On the Caesar side, are y'all seeing any action on this game? Maybe commensurate with like a Power 5 type game, or is it still pretty quiet?
It's definitely not among the top so far, and it's actually been pretty good two-way action. Like Tulane's gotten majority of the action, but it's around like 56% of the money, and this one's at 1.5. This game is really interesting to me. Obviously, Tulane's having one of their best seasons since 1998, and UCF under Gus Malzahn. They've been really running the ball nicely, going up against Tulane's really stout defense. So this matchup is incredibly interesting to me. I don't think it'll end up as one of the top handles overall, just because you have LSU-Arkansas and then also TCU-Texas. That's the clear number 2 for this slate. But I do think it could end up like top 10.
While we have you, Max, before we pivot to the NFL, let's take a look at the rest of the college games. Just some of the big names out there. You mentioned TCU, Texas. I think a lot of people found that to be a strange line. And I know Texas in power ratings and analytics and things is getting a lot of love. But to see an undefeated number 4 team getting a touchdown in any game is pretty significant.
Yeah, and the average bettor will see that and see, like you're saying, TCU is undefeated, and not only are they an underdog, but 7 points is a good amount of points. But the betting market is not really quite sold on this TCU team, at least compared to their ranking. TCU, they've had a number of games where they've fallen behind in the first half, and then they've needed their offense to really rally things up in the second half. And there have been, a lot of close wins, and then also they've been fortunate. Opposing starting quarterbacks that they've gone up against multiple times this season have gotten injured. And so in the midst of these comebacks, they're also facing backup quarterbacks versus Texas. They've been a little bit unlucky in the fact that all 3 of their losses have come down to 1 possession, including that 1-point loss to Alabama. They lost in overtime to Texas Tech, and they blew a touchdown lead to Oklahoma State in the 4th quarter. So I think Quinn Ewers and company, the market was definitely pretty low on Texas, at least with their win total coming into the season. Like they were really hammering under 9.5 and under 9, which under 9.5 obviously already won. And so that looks good. But I think talent wise, with just how well Texas has been competing with good teams this year, I think the market is high on Texas. And so this is a spot where, they're going to get Texas's home run effort, especially because they need this win to stay alive in the Big 12 race.
For sure. And Max, since the weather's looking horrendously bleak this weekend, how much has that impacted money lines or where the money's going?
Yeah, so usually with weather, it's not necessarily like rain that'll impact it as much. It's more wind. And whenever there's game with double-digit mile-per-hour winds or higher, teams or bettors will typically, bet the under. And then also, if there's a bigger favorite, especially one that has a strong passing attack, that line will be coming down. Or if there's a matchup where there's, a team that likes to run the ball versus one that likes to pass the ball, they'll tend to back those types of teams. But as you know, the forecast has been up for several days. Weather can change, and we'll just have to see leading up to the games, just how much of an impact the weather truly plays. But leading up to it, we will get good money on unders, just because, especially with the rest of the market and numbers coming down, and bettors will see maybe one shop is a little slower to respond to the weather news compared to others. And so it kind of becomes a case of FOMO at that point, and people just running to back the unders.
On the topic of weather, Max, we saw Ohio State as 38-point favorites last week, and we had that insane wind, and they ended up only winning by 14. Now this week, they're 40-point favorites. Have you seen any trends, anyone really hesitant to kind of pull the trigger on Ohio State to cover 40 points?
Yeah, so Indiana's actually gotten the majority of the money to cover the spread. I think it's around like mid 60s, like 64% or something like that in terms of the money that they've gotten. Ohio State, they've been a little Jekyll and Hyde this season. People were really loving them in Alabama to win the national title in the offseason. And there have just been some, questionable performances, I think, by Ohio State. The offense, CJ Stroud's the Heisman favorite, but to be honest, I was kind of like, I don't think he's looked like that much better than the rest of the field. And I know that they've had injuries with their star wideout Jackson Smith-Jigba, but they still have a loaded offensive personnel group. And at 40 points is a lot to ask for a college football spread. So I'm not surprised that Indiana's gotten the majority of the action there so far.
Yeah, I was all over Northwestern with the 38 last week in that wind, and I think Zoe brings up a good point. And it allows us to kind of segue into tonight's NFL game in Carolina, because the remnants of Tropical Storm Nicole are headed up the coast as we speak. It looks like maybe around halftime of that game, maybe even sooner, you're going to see a lot of rain, possibly some winds. Any movement on the total in this one, or I know the spreads moved from 3 down to 2.5 for the Falcons.
Yeah, so for the total, we opened this at 42.5, and it got all the way up to 44 before the weather report started coming in, and then it's been really strong action on the under, and so now we're down to 41. We've taken 2 six-figure bets on the under, and so obviously the weather playing a big role there, and Falcons and Panthers, these aren't two necessarily strong passing attacks. The Falcons, they run the ball more than any other team in the league. And people have really been, and with PJ Walker, not only has he not been, I guess putting up prolific passing totals, but people, even though his passing yardage prop is under 200, I think it opened at 182.5. They've been really hammering it down, and now it's at 173.5. So even though, these aren't, teams that love to throw the ball, even with these conditions, people have just been, still attacking the under, whether it's for the total or for passing player props.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, on bet.nola.com on our daily best bet, I took the under 41 and said, it's almost like a social experiment. What happens when you put Marcus Mariota and PJ Walker into tropical storm type weather and have them play against NFL defenses? And I guess we'll find out tonight. But
never forget the Bills Patriots win game from last year. That was one of the wild. And just watching the live totals unfold as soon as you could just see how much the offenses were impacted by the wind. I'll never forget that game.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to get quite that kind of wind tonight, but there'll be some rain too. So we'll see. I did have one more question on college football as we talking with Max Meyer, who's the editorial content writer for Caesar Sportsbook. The 2 big road favorites here in the SEC, Alabama and Georgia, and I know they're typically public sides. A lot of points for road teams against the Mississippi schools. What are we seeing on those games?
Yeah, so for Alabama, Ole Miss has been a pretty popular home dog so far, both in terms of tickets and handle. They've gotten about, I think it's mid 60s for tickets and for handle the last time I checked. And then Georgia, Mississippi State. Georgia, obviously coming off that convincing win over Tennessee, they've gotten about, I think it was 72% of the tickets against the spread. It was definitely mid or above 70. But we took a $55,000 bet on Mississippi State at plus 16.5. And so now that's why the line is down to 16. And that bet is also the major driving force behind Mississippi State getting about 75% of the handle. So, it is a lot of points, and especially, Alabama, this has been a very disappointing season for them. People thought that this was a generational team coming into the season. Their quarterback, Bryce Young, had just won the Heisman the year before. Will Anderson on defense was considered probably the top player in the country. And so seeing all those points, that they're getting on the road, or laying on the road, I should say, it's definitely tempting for bettors to roll with Ole Miss. But Ole Miss, they're still ranked 11, but they haven't exactly been the most convincing this season. So I think it's kind of like a buyer beware in terms of that game. And then Mississippi State, we've seen Mike Leach go up against Nick Saban in Alabama a lot before, and it's kind of been a mismatch. And obviously Kirby Smart is modeling his Georgia program after Alabama. And so again, like this is another one, like you said, a lot of points, but Mike Leach hasn't exactly had, the most success as a big underdog against these types of teams.
Yeah, super interesting stuff there. And Max, before we let you go, a look at the NFL games, and I think one of the spreads everyone's been talking about is the Bills. I think they open at 9.5, something close to that, something close to 10. And then as news came out about Josh Allen's elbow injury and how serious that might be, it's come down all week. Clearly, people betting on this game do not believe Josh Allen will play. The spread's all the way down to 3.5. Am I missing anything as far as what we've seen on this game? And then what happens if he comes out and he does practice in the next couple of days?
Yeah, so like you were saying with how the line is trending, it doesn't look like that Josh Allen is going to play. So we opened this 8.5 when we had the Sunday openers. And, by the end of the night, it was down to 7.5. And then Monday, Tuesday, and yesterday, this line dropped by at least a point every single day. So it kind of tells you what the market thinks about whether Allen's going to play. And then action-wise, I mean, as you could probably expect, the Vikings have gotten the majority of the action for both spread and money line. Spread's about 68% of the tickets, 84% of the money. Money line's even more lopsided. They've gotten about 94% of the money to win this game outright. And yesterday it was actually 99%. So we've seen a little bit of Bills money come in today. Same for spread too, but it's still been majority Vikings action. And, and it moved from, I think it was from 5 to 3.5 yesterday, and it still stayed put at 3.5. So I feel like it's kind of bottomed out there for now. And I was talking with our assistant director of trading, Adam Pullen, and he says that he thinks that the line would get to 2.5 or 3 if Allen was officially ruled out. And this was a couple days ago. So at 3.5, it basically tells you everything you need to know. But if he were to miraculously play, the line would definitely be coming back up. I mean, there aren't that many quarterbacks that are worth more to the spread than Josh Allen. And I don't think it'll get all the way back up to 8.5 because I think people have to wait and see just how impacted he is from the elbow injury. But I do think that it would still go up by at least a few points.
One last one, Colts and Raiders. Ugly game. Two teams probably out of the playoff hunt. But with Jeff Saturday taking over for the Colts, they fire Frank Reich, they go get a former All-Pro offensive lineman who's coaching a high school team. How do you even price that? I mean, like it's an unforeseen situation. You don't have a precedent for it. And I know the Colts have actually taken some money in the meantime.
Yeah, so I was really interested to see where this line would move, if it would move once the news came out that Reich was fired and that Saturday was named the interim. And so I guess before, so Raiders opened 5.5-point home favorites, and they were -6 when that news came out. It didn't move from 6 the rest of the day. So the market kind of told you, what they think of a coaching change, even with someone with no prior NFL coaching or college coaching experience like Jeff Saturday. It just, obviously, like we were just talking about, Josh Allen, huge impact to the spread. And, some people might think that, quarterback's most important, but how much of a difference is it compared to a head coach, especially one that is, coaching his first career game? And it's a major difference between those two. And then earlier this morning, I actually looked it up. The Colts were getting the least money out of any team to cover the spread in their respective Week 10 matchup. That's actually changed throughout the day. So this line's gone from Raiders -6 to Raiders -4.5. We've gotten a couple big Colts bets, enough so that the Colts are now getting the majority of the action, including a $55,000 bet on a Colts +5.
All right, Max Meyer from Caesar Sportsbook. We appreciate you stopping by and dropping knowledge as always.
No, appreciate you having me on, guys, and looking forward to another fun football weekend.
All right, we'll see you next time, Max. Thank you. So that's Max Meyer. Thanks to him and to Rod Walker for stopping by and helping us out without Jim and Spencer's craziness to kind of get us through the hour. So thankful for those guys. Now it's actually time, though. We're going to pivot and talk some basketball here on Bayou Bets, and this is Zoe Collins-Rath's Time to Shine. Making your name possessive is like a tongue twister. Zoe Collins-Rath's Time to Shine. But we're talking college basketball, and I'm going to start with the men, but we also are going to talk a little bit of women's college futures as well. LSU started last night. They played against UMKC, Missouri, Kansas City. Won the game. I wouldn't say they were convincing doing it. But Zoe, you said something interesting to me today. As Houston, by the way, has taken over as national championship favorite, you are fading Houston and fading Gonzaga, all about the power conference teams this year.
Okay, Houston has done well in previous seasons. They've made it to the Final Four one year, but they keep getting bounced in the second or third round of the NCAA tournament. They have a young team, so there's a lot of potential there, and their ceiling is really high. But for them to be favored as champions this early and with such a young team, I don't see it. I don't buy it. And Gonzaga is someone once, I heard this phrase in passing, is an oldie but goodie. Everyone loves Gonzaga. Everyone wants them to do well. The problem is they haven't won an NCAA championship in I don't know how long.
Ever.
Ever?
Never won one. They've gotten there plenty of times. In fact, I think it's 7 straight Sweet 16s for Gonzaga, maybe more, but they have never won the championship.
I wonder why. And that's a question for coaching staff, players, whatever the case may be. But they always get bounced in the tournament and everyone loves them. I get it. But when it comes to the postseason, they just can't succeed compared to the other Power 5 conferences. And I'm shocked, actually, that Kansas is as low as it is, considering they're the defending champions. I can see North Carolina. It's the being so high, as well as Kentucky. Those are all the goodies. And the legacies of those championship teams, especially with basketball, is there. And UNC has the same crew returning and the same coach. So why the hell not favor? I may have to leave that out. I'm sorry. So why not favor UNC and favor Houston? Gabe, you're in Houston. Is there a buzz about Houston? Is a return of Phi Slamma Jamma?
There's a lot of buzz when they get Marcus Sasser back. I know a lot of Houston fans were disappointed last year when he suffered a season-ending injury. So, I mean, he's their star this year, especially in a young team. You've got the superstar senior who it's his last ride. So I can see where people are getting the idea that Houston could win. And, honestly, I think they can. Houston has only gotten better as the years have gone on. And I think this team is legit. I think they've recruited really well under Kelvin Sampson. But I just don't know if I can buy into the championship favorites, like you said. Personally, if I were to make a pick, I would go with North Carolina. I like their returning core. They had a young team last year, but I don't know where people are getting Kentucky. I'll say that. I know Sheboy came back, and they have a few other guys who returned. I don't think Calipari has it anymore. I think Kentucky's one of those teams who they might go into the tournament with a lot of buzz, and they'll just disappoint you. Kind of like Tennessee in a way. If anything, out of the SEC, I like Arkansas more than the others. But overall, I'd say my pick right now would be North Carolina.
I'll kind of fade both of you just by saying, if you're going to bet a college basketball future this early in the season, it better be a long shot, 20-1 or higher. Because honestly, if you like Carolina or you like Gonzaga or you like Arkansas, those numbers are not going to get that much lower all the way into February or March, when we have a much better idea, A, of what the team looks like, and B, if all of their star players are healthy. The number may drop a little bit if Arkansas is sitting there at 32-3 and a number 1 seed in the tournament. You're not going to get them at 16-1. But in a tournament scenario, you still get a team like that at a 7-1 or 8-1 before the tournament, certainly depending on their draw. So to me, betting a favorite at this stage, no bueno. With that said, Zoe, women's side, historically speaking, in women's basketball, the favorites have won at a much higher rate, and so there may be some value in it. The favorite this year, as it has been the past couple of years, the South Carolina Gamecocks, plus 130, almost even money to repeat as champion. But you have another team you said to look out for.
Yeah. So obviously I grew up playing basketball and I watched a lot of women's basketball. For the longest time, they would always rotate between UConn and Tennessee. That's not going to happen anymore. I think South Carolina is a great favorite. Dawn Staley is a great coach and has always been able to build some consistency when her core seniors leave. But, Stanford won in 2020, I believe it was, and that was a great season. And so keep your eye on Stanford. Connecticut could be a long shot if Paige Beckers comes back soon enough, but she's recovering from ACL surgery. And maybe keep an eye on Ohio State. They were ranked 14 and they toppled number 5 Tennessee. The beautiful thing about women's basketball is you don't know when an upset's going to come and when it's going to happen. So if you want to go for any long shot wins, start betting on women's basketball. And on top of that, LSU's women's basketball is, I think, looking different than it was last season. Kim Mulkey, I think, has built up a great recruiting class. And Angel Rice, the transfer from Maryland, who's a grad student, she's the real deal. She's legit. So always bet on LSU women's basketball. And if you think a matchup could be an upset, go for the upset.
All right. Don't always bet on anything, by the way. That's bad advice. Don't always bet on anything. But I was going to ask you, Zoe, LSU. Whoops, sorry, that's a sneak peek at your picks. But LSU at 40-1 to win the national title. I know. Listen, they're a long shot, but like I said, this is the time of year to bet those long shots. With Kim Mulkey, could she build it into something? Obviously, they're going to be underdogs against a team like a Stanford or a South Carolina, but this team's going to make it into the tournament. You sound pretty confident they're going to be a pretty high seed. 40-1 looks kind of tempting to me.
It can be very tempting, and I think maybe with last year maybe getting bounced in the second round, the Lady Tigers and Kim Mulkey were like, okay, let's trying to get her feet under her, and she's working in with a class of players that technically aren't hers because she didn't recruit them, but she's recruited some of these players. And I think the system is different. And I think everyone is trusting in the system and trusting in each other that everything is going to work out in their favor. She's trying to build up LSU women's basketball to what it was of years previously. And that takes time. If they make it into the tournament, great. If they make it to the Elite Eight, great. But they just have to keep being consistent and be smart with how they play. Because on Monday night, I was watching some of the play, and how some of them were playing may not really go well if you're playing a team like South Carolina or UConn, because referees are going to call anything that goes like this. It's going to be a foul, which can get them into foul trouble early.
All right, there you have it. I do want to get into y'all's picks. We did ask Zoe and Gabe to make some picks, and then I have Jim and Spencer's Big Bucks picks as well. But guys, your picks first. Gabe, let's start with you. And you have a pick on tonight's game, and I was going to say the golden rule is do not pick against a home underdog in a division game. But your first time on the show, and you've gone and done it, Gabe. You've taken the Falcons tonight, -2.5. What do you see in Atlanta on Thursday Night Football?
The main thing is I looked at the game a few weeks ago. I watched that, and the Falcons looked like the better team for most of the game. And then you factor in the return of Cordero Patterson, who I think is at least worth 2.5 points by himself. And that's really where I made the decision to go with Atlanta to cover. I think right now the Panthers have some uncertainty in their backfield. Dante Foreman 2 weeks ago looked great, but then last week he didn't have many opportunities to run the rock against the Bengals, but he just didn't look good either. So, and then Chuba Hubbard's coming back. I don't know what to make of the Panthers right now. And, we could see a quarterback change part of the way through because they've activated Darnold And then you got Baker Mayfield, who came in last week. I think the Panthers are too much of a mess right now, and I think the Falcons have looked good when they've played this year.
Take the under. Take the under. It's going to be rainy and windy. All right, Gabe, run us quickly through some of the rest of your picks here.
The Colts are a mess, so give me the Raiders. I think they just have too many weapons on offense. The Broncos are coming off a bye week. I think they're going to figure it out on offense. I think they've had 14 days. This is in one of my pieces coming out later. I like Russell Wilson over passing yards in that game. The Titans have an atrocious secondary. So that's why I like the Broncos in that one. Derrick Henry can only carry you so far.
That's right.
Georgia against Mississippi State. I just don't like Mississippi State when they play good teams. LSU beat the brakes off them in the second half. I think Georgia is a great team. I think they'll continue to show that. They've got a chip on their shoulder after losing the number 1 ranking in the college football playoff. Alabama coming off a loss. That's just a given almost. Ole Miss is getting a lot of points at home. I don't think Ole Miss is anywhere near as good as people think they are. I explained the LSU-Arkansas earlier, although I didn't mention the KJ Jefferson uncertainty. I think that factors in. The Blazers are a scrappy team. I like them, and I know they're going to be without their 2 best players, but I like the Blazers. I have a soft spot for them. I feel like anytime those teams out west have a chance to prove themselves to the rest of the country who doesn't stay up absurdly late like the rest of us and watch West Coast basketball, I think you take them, especially at 9 points. And then I think the other pick I had in there was, Dallas -5 against the Wizards. The Wizards have lost 3 in a row at home. I like Dallas, especially after last night or their last game and what they did. I like them to bounce back.
All right, Zoe, your picks for tonight. Some similar in here. I know you like the Mavs as well, but talk us through some of your picks.
Yeah. Sorry, Dad. I picked the Cowboys because the Packers' downward spiral is just going to continue. The only way the Packers will win the game is if the Cowboys let the cold get to them, because Southern folk don't handle cold very well. I think the Bills are going to win only by the skin of their teeth if Josh Allen doesn't play. I picked the Browns, surprisingly enough, because A, why not? And B, they've lost a couple of their games by only maybe 1 or 2 points. So maybe Miami is the game that can get them to a victory. For the Commanders and Eagles, the Eagles should win, but I'm going to put this out there. Most teams that have gone undefeated lose somewhere within their season. I don't think the Commanders are going to give the Eagles their first loss of the season. Alabama, pretty obvious. I think they're just going to run roughshod over Ole Miss. They're mad and frustrated about losing in overtime, probably. I picked Louisville over Clemson. I picked the Dogs because it's weird to me that Clemson lost to Notre Dame in the fashion that they did, and they seem to be having quarterback trouble, and in the name is consistency, and they're very inconsistent. Sixers and Hawks can be a really good early showing of what Eastern Conference basketball semifinal, maybe finals could look like. So that game's going to go back and forth in a great battle between young stars and Joel Embiid and Trae Young. And like Gabe said, I like what the Mavs have been doing. And because I just can't pick the Wizards. What are they doing?
They're the Wizards. Enough said. I know Jim Derry likes some of your picks, Zoe, and let's get to big bucks right now, and I'll go first because I'm in last place, although I did have a good week last week. My best bet of the week in big bucks, Bucks -2.5 against Seattle in Munich. I actually toured that stadium in March. It's very cool, the Bayern Munich Stadium, Allianz Arena. The tickets, cheapest tickets for this one are going for like €500. So Germany is ready for the NFL. That's just a side note to say, I think the Bucks are completely undervalued here. I know the Seahawks have been America's darling and everyone's falling in love with Geno Smith, and he has been tremendous, and the Seahawks have been surprised. Pete Carroll might be the coach of the year. All of that is true. But listen, if this game was played a month ago, the Bucs would have been 8-point favorites. And the teams are not that much different than they were a month ago to tell me that it should be a 5-6 point difference in the line. I'm taking Tampa Bay. They're getting healthy. I think they're going to start to get on a roll here. A couple of other ones. My chalk pick, Oregon at home, very good. Washington on the road, not very good. Simple as that. Oregon wins by 2 TDs or more. Underdog pick, I'm going to go against you guys. Look, this is Mississippi State's Super Bowl. Gabe, I understand Georgia's very good. Georgia might ground them into the turf 35-7, something to that effect here. But Mississippi State, Mike Leach has a habit of coming up big in these games. Don't know that Mississippi State wins outright. I don't have the gumption to pick that, but I do kind of see Mississippi State at least keeping it close. Cardinals, Rams both have quarterback problems, taking the under. And then teaser starts tonight with the Panthers plus 8.5 in what should be a close, low-scoring game, and the 49ers on Sunday night. Hopefully I'll hit one of those teasers. Jim seems to hit them every single week. But, Gabe, tell me how wrong I am on Georgia. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I've seen nothing from Mississippi State against good teams this year to believe that they'll cover that. Like I said, LSU completely dominated them for 3/4 of that game. Alabama had their way with them. I think the same will be done by Georgia tonight. I think they're a one-trick pony with their passing game, and if you can defend the dink and dunk, you're fine.
All right, I'm going to zig where y'all are going to zag on that one. We'll go to Spencer, who's now in second place on Big Bucks. He's taking the Raiders against the Colts, banking on Jeff Saturday having big problems in his first start. I don't know if I'd lay the Raiders 6.5 points against anybody. Taking the 49ers over the Chargers, I like that one. He's taking the dog on Monday Night Football, Commanders plus 11 over the Eagles, Browns and Dolphins over. And then this is the most Aunt Mabel thing I've ever seen one of us do. Spencer the Guru taking all of the big favorites in the SEC, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. And he's only getting like plus 160 from it. Spencer, I wish he was watching. He's out playing golf or something. He's on vacation. God bless him. I wish I was doing it. But that is the chalkiest parlay I've ever seen in my life. And it may hit. It may hit plus 160, but we shall see. In fact, the smallest favorite of any of those teams by far is LSU. I think Kentucky's double-digit favorite against Vanderbilt. Bama, Georgia, Tennessee, all double-digit favorites in their games. So it may come down to LSU. So maybe there's some value there. And then finally, Jim, as much as I hate to say it, he's been on a roll. The man has been hot, and he likes the Giants in that running game against the Texans. He also likes the Cowboys, says he's a little scared to bet with the public. But Zoe, he's with you. It's also tough to bet against Green Bay at home late in the year. They don't lose these games once the weather turns cold very often, but they haven't been very good very often. Browns at the Dolphins, another one of Zoe's picks. Vikings, Bills under 43.5 with no Josh Allen in all likelihood. And then his teaser, half of the legs similar to mine, 49ers -1, and then he's back on those Tennessee Titans again, plus 3.5. I'm going to say it, guys. How do you bet on Malik Willis? Maybe Ryan Tannehill comes back. But I know they covered Sunday night. I know they covered the 12-point spread against the Chiefs. How can you bet on Malik Willis?
No, like I said earlier, Derrick Henry can only carry you so far.
I agree with that. I mean, I think that's a tight game. Maybe he'll be okay with the 3.5 points, but I wouldn't go there. Of course, Jim, got to hand it to him. He's been hot. At some point, he'll cool off. Maybe it will be this week. We'll be back with you Monday for Bayou Bets at 4 o'clock. Spencer and Jim will be back. I don't know if I'll be there or not. I'll be flying back from Pittsburgh. I have to look at the times and see if there's a spot in the airport where I could catch part of the show. But until then, guys, final thoughts. And since that's the one game we have not made a pick on, Saints and Steelers. Zoe, you first. Your pick on Saints and Steelers.
Oh, Lord. I didn't do well last time, and our coworker Patrick kind of dinged me for it. I'm going with Pittsburgh, maybe 21-18.
You do not sound very convinced of this.
I'm not convinced either one of these teams are going to win if I'm being 100% honest.
Well, let's go 20-20 then. Gabe, Saints-Steelers pick.
This screams 16-13. This is going to be bad football. As a Houston native, I know what bad football looks like, and I think this game might be even uglier than Texans-Giants. It's going to be bad, but give me 16-13 Saints. Alvin Kamara gets it done.
All right, I like that. I'm going to take the Steelers. I don't have a lot of conviction in the pick, but I do think there's a chance T.J. Watt plays, and combine that with the Saints' offensive line injuries. Going to be a real challenge to protect Andy Dalton. And I threw a stat out a couple of weeks ago. Andy Dalton's actually been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL with a clean pocket. Unfortunately, Monday night against Baltimore did not have a clean pocket very often. If T.J. Watt's playing and he's down 2 starting offensive linemen, he ain't going to have a clean pocket in this one either. That's when turnovers happen. I think the Steelers get it done, let's say 24-16. And you may hear some calls for Dennis Allen's head next week. We'll see. I know it's early for that, but at 3-7, Saints fans were expecting a lot better. Could get ugly. Check us out on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, Bayou Bets and Bet.NOLA. I will be in Pittsburgh for the game Sunday. Also subscribe to the Bayou Bets YouTube channel, and we'll see you at 4 o'clock on Monday, and also tomorrow morning, Datitude, Jim Derry, and Jeff Duncan live at 9:15 on the NOLA.com and Bayou Bets Facebook pages. Join them, join the conversation about Saints and Steelers. Until then, our thanks to Rod Walker of the Times-Picayune and Max Meyer of Caesar Sportsbook for dropping by. And for Gabe Henderson and Zoe Collins-Rath, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks, everybody.